This is the new American media. And we're back with NBA scout Zak Baris. Zak, I want to talk to you a little bit. We talked first about the Cavs firing Byron Scott and who they might bring back in. Now I just want to talk about what happened on the last day of the season. The Los Angeles Lakers made the playoffs, and people in Cleveland were celebrating. Can you break down for people that aren't really aware of what just happened, how helpful that was for the Cavs?
So I'll just break down the whole trade so people understand anyways. The Cavaliers last year, when they made the deal, the Lakers weren't going to be using their first-round pick anyways this year. They had traded to the Suns. But the Cavaliers owned Miami's pick, and last year when the Cavaliers traded Ramon Sessions, they were given a first-round pick in last year's draft, which they wound up using, trading up and getting Tyler Zeller. And then this year they have the ability to swap it with the Miami Heat pick. So it goes now from 30 to 17, which is a huge jump considering a lot of the talent, is drained by pick number 30. Usually you're not really getting an NBA player at 30. Sometimes you do, but a lot of the time the guys flame out. At 17, you have the chance to get a good bench player or sometimes even a starter. And the Cavaliers have the ability to do that now. This draft is, it's particularly weak. It's not deep. You had guys like, who thought they were probably coming out, Mitch McGary and Glenn Robinson, both declared they're going back to school today. Both were mid-first-round picks. McGary possibly even the lottery. Glenn Robinson, I thought would be a nice fit on the Cavs if he fell to 17. But this draft isn't deep, so hopefully the Cavaliers can land something in the top 3 and be able to draft Nerlens Noel or Otto Porter, one of those guys. Those are the best potential fits for the Cavaliers in this draft.
Is there any way with Kobe being hurt and with everything going on that it would have actually benefited the Lakers to not win that game and just stay out, keep their draft pick?
Absolutely not, because the Lakers wouldn't have been picking in the lottery. That pick would have gone to the Phoenix Suns if had it been a lottery pick. So it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered either way.
Okay, so they don't have it either way. Basically, the only people upset are those are the Phoenix Suns fans.
Yeah, exactly. Phoenix is the only one fans who should be upset, because they would have had a lottery pick, and their roster is drained of any, they have no young talent on their roster. I mean, absolutely none. Kendall Marshall's a complete bust. And they're all their talent is with Luis Scola, Gortat, and Michael Beasley. Well, I don't even count Beasley. I'm not even going to say Michael Beasley. So, but, Gortat and Scola are basically their two most talented players, and, they're not young.
You know what?
If I in his 30s.
If I recall correctly, one of the people that tends to listen to our shows and leave comments on just about every NBA show goes by the handle UFC is MMA. I believe he's a Phoenix Suns fan, so I think we're talking directly to him right now. Because
I feel bad because they were so great when under the Colangelo's ownership. They were fantastic for years, and Robert Sarver took over, and it just hasn't been the same. Ever since they got rid of Amari and chose to blow up the team, they just really haven't been there. So it's unfortunate because it's one of those teams, since they became a team, it seemed like they were in the playoffs every single year.
In the 90s,
the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, even the 2000s. They were almost a playoff team almost every single year of their existence.
I mean, the Dan Marley, Kevin Johnson, the Charles Barkley. I mean, that was a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and even the Suns in the 2000s, when they had Sean Marion, Amari Stoudemire, Steve Nash.
Absolutely, yeah.
They were putting together, they had to trade guys like Rondo, Luol Deng. They had to trade their draft picks away because they were so talented. Joe Johnson. Some of those teams were absolutely just fantastic. Who
was that else? Cedric Ceballos?
Ceballos was in the 90s. He was not in the he was earlier.
Yeah, so this was basically Lakers didn't have it either way. You might as well make the playoffs. Give Dwight a taste of LA playoff intensity. See if you can get him to stay.
I think it's very good though that the Lakers made the playoffs for Dwight Howard's sake. I tend to think now, as the season's progressed, I think the Lakers have gelled more as a team. I think Dwight Howard will stay an LA Laker. I think the only other realistic possibility he would actually go to is Houston. But like I said, at the same time, it's very hard to see a player leaving the Lakers. Especially. He would have to turn down that extra year and all that extra money. He gets $80 million over 4 years if he goes to Houston, $117 over 5 if he stays in L.A. Plus Dwight, tends, it seems like he wants to be a movie star. I tend to think he re-ups here, but you never know. It would have been a totally different story had they missed the playoffs. Maybe he goes, maybe I'll walk. Maybe this isn't the team for me, and maybe I'll play for Houston because Houston's a 45-win team without me. They're probably a 65-win team with me.
I'm wondering if you watched him win that game to make it into the playoffs without Kobe, and you just wonder, because Kobe has his hands on the ball so often, he's taken so many shots, and he's a very good player, but is there any possibility that the team could be better without him? I know that's sacrilegious to even just toss out there, but is that even possible?
I don't think they would be better, but the thing is they have four really great – well, I mean, Nash is starting to wind down, but Nash is still a good player, but they have two superstars on their team in Kobe and Dwight. They just don't mesh – and even Gasol's still an excellent player. They just don't all particularly mesh well all together, and that's the problem. On paper, an NBA 2K or something, they're a championship team. When you put it all together, it's just the fits aren't there. Gasol played fantastic last night. That was an unbelievable game by Gasol. And he looked phenomenal. That was vintage Pau Gasol right there. If he can play like that on a nightly basis, LA is not going to be an easy out in the playoffs. But I still don't think they beat San Antonio anyways. I think San Antonio will probably win it in 5.
Really? Even though they're banged up? Oh, well, you know what? Now we're starting to jump the gun here. Let's just wrap this up on the Lakers because I want to do like a quick playoff preview. All right. So, I mean, legitimately, where are the Cavs projected to pick? What, number 3?
Number 3.
But
yeah.
It's a lottery, so they could slip and slide or jump up if they need to. How do you see the top 5 picks? We'll just wrap it up with that. The top 5 picks.
You'll see guys like Nerlens Noel going number 1. Marcus Smart returning to school definitely shook up the draft a little bit because he was a guaranteed top 5 pick. He wasn't going to get past a team like Orlando. So now you have guys like Ben McLemore, Otto Porter. There are guys like Anthony Bennett, Michael Carter-Williams that can round out. It just depends where team needs are. I don't see Trey Burke going in the top 5, but Burke could go as high as 6 or 7. This is going to be an interesting draft to say the least.
And what do you think might be sitting there as
Alex Len, the center from Maryland? It's definitely going to be an interesting draft.
Well, what do you think? What do you think? Now I'm asking you to guess 17 other things or 16 other things to happen, but what are a couple of names that you think are in that 15 to 20 range that might be sitting there for the Cavs with that extra draft pick?
It's going to be really tough to see now. Like I said, I have to wait till players are done declaring.
Okay, that's fair enough.
So it's just too hard to make an assessment at this point.
Let me ask the question a little differently. Let me ask the question a little differently. That's fair. How about this? Is there any chance if the Cavs get the number 3 pick, is there any chance they could package that 17 pick with their number 3 to go number 1 or number 2?
It's possible. It just depends. If Orlando's sitting there picking at number 1 and the Cavs are at 3, Orlando goes, we don't need Nerlens Noel, but he's going to be drafted number 2. Yeah, let's acquire a second pick. We'll trade him. We'll make that deal right now. A team like Orlando might jump in and do it. Almost any other team that lands the number 1 overall pick for the most part is probably going to take Nerlens Noel number 1 overall.
And is he going to play next year?
I don't know. I don't know where he's doing his pre-draft training yet. That hasn't been. I haven't looked at the list to see where he's doing his pre-draft training. I don't even know if he can really walk yet. That's the question. So I don't think he's going to be shooting a basketball too much. He's obviously not going to be running, but I tend to think he will play next year. It just depends. If you have the franchise riding on him, you don't want to throw him in there right away. You want him to be able to develop. And any team who has the first pick for the most part is going to probably be pretty terrible the next season anyways. So let him sit for a while. Wait till he's 110% until he's ready to come back, and then go and play him. That's the best option right there.
Well, that would make for quite an interesting 2014 if you got Kyrie and Tristan and a bunch of players that have developed, and you got Nerlens Noel coming off of an injury, and it's a free agent class. Pretty interesting in 2014 with a new head coach, maybe a Larry Bird or a Phil Jackson.
I tend to think, though, that the Cavaliers will make an attempt this offseason, like I've been saying all along. I think they're going to make an attempt because you really cannot alienate the fan base any longer. They've had 3 horrible seasons in a row with less than 25 wins apiece, 24 wins apiece. And this is the year you have to make a splash and go and do something. So I think, you're going to look at guys hitting the market. Will they attempt to trade for a Kevin Love type player? Yes, I think they will. I'm not saying they're going to acquire Kevin Love, but I think they're going to go after an Al Horford or LaMarcus Aldridge. I think they're going to make an attempt on one of those 3 guys. A guy will put people in the seats, and will also help make an attempt in 2014 when you're trying to draw a certain free agent back to town. It helps. It would help much. If the Cavaliers are sitting there with 20 wins next year, it's not going to be an easy task to lure LeBron James back to town. If you're in there as a 46-win basketball team next year with young and developing players, you can go say, listen, look what we can give you. This is the team we're putting on the court, 46 wins. We have cap room to sign you. We can go sign the mid-level, and we have room for another piece too. We can do that, and, we could look at ourselves as a high 60-win team next year. Come back here, and then he would feel comfortable. I don't know if he would feel comfortable going to a team that doesn't have a lot of talent on it. So the Cavaliers need to seriously contemplate what they're going to do this offseason, whether they're going to use that pick on a young, on a young player in the draft, or they're going to go and trade for a veteran. It just all depends what they can do with it and where they pick. I tend to think if the pick is number 5 overall and they don't get a top 3 pick or the number 1 overall pick, they're going to definitely attempt to trade it.
Really? So what could a team trade a number 5 pick for? What would they try to get?
It just depends. I mean, I think any deal involving one of those 3 players that I mentioned would involve Anderson Varejao being part of the deal.
Oh, okay.
It could even be a 3-way trade because the Atlanta Hawks
might
not want Anderson Varejao. If he was involved in it. Danny Ferry's trying to get that team younger. He's trying to clear cap space. If he gets rid of Horford, he clears some space, also acquires a top 5 pick. But at the same time, he might want something else in the deal because he's giving up an all-star center.
Right.
For a 30-year-old. So they might try to make it a 3-way trade and get rid of Varejao and get another pick in that draft too. So that might be what Ferry's,
Okay, so maybe you're saying look out then in case the Cavs fall lower than the number 3. Maybe they'll just package it, try to get Love, try to get somebody.
Especially if they fall lower than number 3 or 4 and Otto Porter's out of their sight. Because he's their best need right now. He's their biggest need right now other than getting, a top-flight center like Nerlens Noel. Or, because Ben McLemore doesn't fit with the Cavs, so it's hard to say. It'd be nice for the Cavaliers to get a nice 2-guard in the draft, but I just don't know if it's going to happen because I don't know where they're going to be picking yet.
Well,
so
I've never seen a draft in any sport where it's full of just busts and deadbeats.
It's happened in the
good
NBA
players
multiple times. It's happened in the NBA a couple times.
Most notably, when you say that, which year do you think of?
I'm thinking of. I think it was the year that it might be the year Kwame Brown was drafted number 1, or there were a couple seasons where you look back on and you're like, wow, these are horrible drafts.
I mean, not a single good player in the first round.
A good player, but I'm not talking about an all-star. There's been drafts without all-stars.
Okay, I mean there are plenty
right now to determine it, but there have been some notoriously bad drafts.
Well, there are plenty of drafts where you don't get a Shaquille O'Neal, a Kobe Bryant, or a LeBron James, or a Michael Jordan. I understand that, but wow, Kwame Brown, number 1. Go figure.
there have been some really bad years in the NBA. They're just untalented. Players choose to return to school. This year wasn't supposed to be a great year for talent anyway.
So it's kind of thin. You're just saying this is a thin year. This is on the lower end of, at least on paper.
And that's why it's surprising me. Some of these guys are returning to school because next year's class isn't the greatest class of all time, but it's very top-heavy next year. You have a lot of talent going in next year's draft. So next year's the year. It's too bad the Cavaliers, didn't suck that this year, to get next year, because if they wound up with Andrew Wiggins or one of the Harrison twins, there's tons of talent in next year's draft. There's Jabari Parker. There's so much talent. There's 8 or 9 guys. Aaron Gordon from Arizona, who's going to be the freshman next year. But there's 8 or 9 guys in next year's draft looking like they could all have been the top pick this year.
All right, hey, real quick, 3 quick things, and I just want to go through this playoff preview real quick. Number 2 story on ESPN.com/NBA. Sources say Mike Brown and Cavaliers reunion is in the works. Just saying. We'll see how it plays out. The 2 quick questions here. How do you feel about New Orleans officially becoming the Pelicans?
Doesn't affect me either way.
It doesn't keep me up at night either, but I think I don't like the name. I'm not a fan.
It's a weird name for a team, but also the Utah Jazz, how does that make any sense?
Jazz belongs in New Orleans, not in Utah.
Exactly.
Let alone Jazz is not a scary mascot either. Ooh, I'm going to play some sweet jazz to you. Oh, okay, watch out.
I just don't understand. There are some teams with some weird names that don't make any sense. And especially the Utah Jazz being at the forefront of it. They should have changed their name and just given it back to New Orleans, but they didn't. And so, it's not like you go to Salt Lake City to hear jazz any time of the year. So
not good jazz, at least. But hey, go ahead. Yeah. What were you saying?
I'm just saying there's some weird team names out there. The Pelicans is definitely strange, but what is a Miami Heat?
Don't get me started.
I'm just saying.
Don't get me thinking. I got plenty of jokes to make there.
I'm just saying it's a flame. That's it. And that's another stupid name for a team. It really is. There's plenty of stupid names out there for teams. So the Pelicans is just one in a bunch.
By the way, that's a really good question. What is the stupidest name in professional sports? Let's just limit it to baseball, basketball, and football, because I really don't even watch hockey.
One that actually makes sense is the Orlando Magic, because of Disney World and the Magic Kingdom. That makes 100% sense. there are some team names out there that, don't make sense. The Pelican is, I think, believe the state bird of Louisiana. At least it makes some sense. It's a weird name and it's going to be a weird logo, but it is what it is.
An Expo. What was an Expo? A Montreal Expo back in the day.
I don't know either. Exposition, I have no clue.
All right, last question, and we're going to bounce to just a quick playoff preview. How do you feel about the NBA starting to fine players for their first flop in the playoffs now? $5,000 for a first flopping offense during this year's playoffs.
I like it. I really do. I think it's a good rule. I wish they did the offensive flops. It would take a lot away from Dwayne Wade's game. But, where he leans into the guy on his shot and always gets the foul call. But, they haven't done that yet. But I think it's a good rule.
Okay. Well, hey, let's do this. Let's hit reset real quick. We'll do a brief station identification break here on the TNAM Radio Network. We're talking with NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris. You can find him on Twitter. He's at ZBaris. And for all of you that are not hip with what we're up to, please find us. We are at American_media_ on Twitter. Search the New American Media on Facebook and like our page. Leave your comments there. Check out youtube.com/The New American Media and subscribe to that and leave your comments. And, of course, check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. On a special Thursday, April 18th, pre-NBA playoff episode of the Unhappy Hour. My name's Brian Engelman, and we'll be right back on the other side with a quick playoff preview here on The New American Media.
You are listening to The New American Media.